Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Easy Mini Painting with me, Christopher Ridge, and we are moving on with more Mansions of Madness, 2nd edition. We are doing the High Priest of Dagon and the 2 ghosts that come with it, and I think that these are really simple, really quick ones to knock out. I got these done pretty quickly, to be honest. The only thing that's going to be minorly challenging, minorly is not a word, but whatever, moderately challenging might be the word, is just I wanted to get a cool sort of blending thing on the legs for the ghosts there. That might be the most trying thing about these paint jobs, but even then, it's pretty straightforward. So, why don't I quit yapping, and why don't we get started here? Alright, very first thing that I did was I started with a layer of deep blue, and I think that will make a pretty good base coat for both of them. I want just a little bit of a blue tint for the ghosts and their ghostly look, and then it's going to be super easy for the High Priest of Dagon there, because he's just going to have that blue sort of cloak. Then we're going to move on to some Barbarian Flesh, and we're going to use that just to get the skin tone on the High Priest, so we'll just knock that out really quickly. Miles, you are very fascinated by my cup of water. Are you trying to tell me right now that you don't have fresh water in your bowl? That might be the case. Let me investigate. I'll be right back. Alright, kitty crisis averted. I think we're in good shape here. Okay, but there we go. Now we just got the High Priest of Dagon's just a simple skin tone there. Like I said, just a layer of Barbarian Flesh. Maybe a couple layers, but that'll do just fine. So I'm going to rinse off my brush there because I'm done with that color. Then we're going to take some matte white, and we're going to go ahead and go over just a few things on the priest there with this color. So first we'll take those sort of, that sort of weird, I don't know what the word is, like this weird shoulder thing that he has here. You can just go over that with the matte white color. Now, if you want, you can go over each sort of individual piece of the sort of shoulder thing. I have no idea what the word would be. Like that. Or you could just go over the whole thing. If you wanted to be a lot quicker about it, you could probably just go over, like those cracks and all that too. Just to knock it out really, really simply and really quickly. But if you want to this is a good way to get some detail practice in just a little bit. And just, some practice in terms of taking your time and not rushing things. You can go over each individual sort of like little piece like that. You can separate it into 1, 2, and 3 pieces like that. So you can do that, or you can just do it all at once, whatever you prefer. That kind of thing right there. That's nice and prominent. And, you can see I got a little bit on the trimming right about there. Not a big deal, because I'm going to go over that with, I think, a gold color later on. So that's all that we're going to do with the white color on the Priest of Dagon like this. So I'm going to rinse that brush off because I'm done with it. And then we're going to move on to a dry brush, because there's really going to not be a lot that you're going to do with the ghosts. Because if you have that layer of white, or that layer of blue, and then you dry brush white over it, so I'm going to take out my dry brush and I'm going to wipe off most of it. Just take a nice, thick bristled brush here, thick, stiff bristles, get a lot of paint into those bristles, but wipe off most of it, so that it kind of looks like that, so that you're dry brushing, and then just lightly go over the entire miniature of the ghost here, and that will give it that nice sort of, ghostly white color. But then I think that the underlayer of blue will be an interesting sort of ectoplasmic, real haunting, spooky kind of look to it. There you go. That's a sort of ghostly white and blue kind of look there. That looks neat. That's got a nice sort of prominent look to him. Yeah, that looks pretty neat. Okay, so I'm going to rinse that brush off. Next up, I'm going to take out some greedy gold, and we're just going to do some minor trimming, minor detail work on the Priest of Dagon there. I use a slightly more detailed brush for that. This one that's got a nice sharp point to it. So I'm just going to go over the sort of trimming of that weird shoulder thing that he's got here. Alright, there you go. You just get the nice sort of trimming on that weird shoulder part of his cloak there. And then what we'll do too is we'll go ahead and just kind of work it into his hat, his something or other here. We'll do this sort of middle piece. Yeah, there we go. Just the sort of middle stripes on the hat there. Just kind of coming all the way around. Simple as that. If you want, you know, you don't have to, but you could probably go over these little sort of, I don't know, tabards? I don't know what the word is. The little things coming down the back of his head there, but I would say that that's optional. You don't have to do that. I'm going to rinse that brush off, though, because I don't need to use a detailed brush for what I'm about to do, but I will go ahead and move on to the staff. I'll just coat the entire staff with gold here, because it kind of makes sense for it to be just a big, fancy gold staff like that, I think. There we go. So now we've got some nice gold there going for the High Priest of Dagon. That's pretty good. I mean, there's not much more that we want to do with him, so I'm going to rinse that brush off. Then we're going to move on to some gunmetal. And using that gunmetal, we're going to go over all of the chains that are wrapped around the ghosts. Hopefully it shouldn't be too big of a deal. And there you go. So now he's just wrapped up in some chains there. I don't really know if the chains are supposed to be part of the ghostly form, or if they really are just sort of being carried by an, you know, like they're regular mortal mortal chains, so to speak, or that they're just being carried by the ghost in some way. But I think that it's a little bit more visually interesting to just have the chains be slightly separate from the ghostly apparition itself. So yeah, that's the kind of thing that we're looking for. I'll just go ahead and give you a nice sort of, you know, full picture here. All right, and then just do the same thing with the other one. All right, and now we've got both of the chains on each of our ghosts there. Wrapped in chains. Jingling, jingling. Yeah, that'll do just fine. Okay, so we're going to rinse off that brush because we're done with that steel color. Then we're taking out some pure red. We're just going to do some detail work with this, starting with the ghosts. I'm just going to go ahead and get each of the eyes there. You don't need to worry about pupils with the ghost eyes. I think that if you just have nice, sort of singularly red, filled in eyes like that, that will do just fine. There you go, just a little something like that. That's all that you need. And both of them there. So hideous, glowing red eyes. And then for the priest, we'll just go ahead and get the sort of jewel on his hat. You can kind of see it, it's just in the center there. God, I've got cat fur everywhere. Okay. There we go, a little something like that. And then we'll do the same thing with the sort of orb on his staff. Might as well, I think that will be pretty decent. All right, now in terms of just general base coat stuff, in terms of core coats, that's basically everything that I want to do with all of them. So I'm gonna let them completely dry because then I'm gonna go over all of them with a dark tone Quickshade, but I want them all to be totally dry, so I'll give them a few minutes. Okay, I think everything is pretty much completely dry there. So what we're gonna do actually is we're gonna take out some dark tone. This is, instead of the strong tone that we normally use, which has a little bit of a brown tint, this is basically just pure black. And the first thing that I'm gonna do with it is I'm going to use I'm going to use a standard brush. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to be very meticulous about this. This is the first time I've done this for the channel. Usually for most tones, I'll just go over the entirety of the miniature. But in the case of the ghosts here, I only want to go over the chains, because I actually want to keep that sort of blue, underlayer, I guess. I want that blue coloration to stay with the rest of the miniature. So I'm actually just going to carefully apply this over only the chains and nothing else. Now, the best miniature painters, yeah, they use multiple quick shades for multiple things, on different miniatures. I just like to do, a single one and then, call it done, for a lot of miniatures. But that's just sort of a shortcut kind of thing. But yeah, we are just going to use this for only the chains, and just take your time with it. Just kind of go over it like you would, like it's a normal paint, and it will sort of recede into the low contours of the sculpt, and it'll bring out the texture and definition of those chains a little bit better. But there we go, and then that just brings out the sort of like shade and change. Yeah, there we go. That's a really, really, really nice contrast between the chains and the rest of the ghost, and that's what we're looking for there. So I'm just going to do the same thing with the other set of chains. There we go, and then those chains stand out really well. So that's pretty cool. All right, and then the last thing that we're going to do is using this same Quickshade, although I'm going to water this one down substantially more, is I am just going to go over the entirety of the High Priest of Dagon here. And that will just kind of add the extra shade and give a little bit more texture to the miniature overall, and that should be pretty good. All right, and there you go. That's the kind of thing that we're looking for there. Now, I am going to let those completely dry again because I do want to touch up some final details for both of them, namely the priest's eyes. And then when I get there too, I'm gonna get out some black. I'm gonna do some weird things with the ghosts, and we'll see if it works out. But first off, they need to completely dry. So give them a little bit of time. Give them plenty of time. You really want to make sure that they're dry before you move on to anything else. I'll be right back. So everything is nice and dried now, and we're going to go back to some matte white. We don't need a whole lot. We're just going to be dotting the eyes for the High Priest of Dagon, and I would say that this is an optional thing. I would say that if you don't want to, worry about eyes, that is totally a-okay. Don't worry about it, but I like to be a little ambitious, and I like to go for eyes. Okay, so there we go. I got the whites of his eyes there first, nice and prominent. Then we're going to take out some matte black. All right, now I'll go ahead and dot the pupils normally, get those eyes finished up. But then after that, we are going to do something a little bit extra with the ghosts. There we go, and that just has his eyes there. There you go. That's looking pretty decent. That's just a pretty complete face right there. So that's the kind of thing that we're looking for right there. All right, and now we're gonna, like I said, we're gonna do some weird stuff here. And this might be a little bit of a gamble. Kind of just got the idea to do it, just sort of off the cuff here. What I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna take out sort of a smaller, but still just sort of a ratty, just sort of bad shape brush, don't worry about it. And then I think what we're gonna do is we're gonna do like sort of a form of dry brushing. I'm gonna get some paint on here, but not a whole lot, And then I'm just going to, and then I'm just gonna go ahead and basically work my way up the legs. And I think what I'm trying to do here, I'm gonna try to basically get the whole base to be, like totally black. And just sort of, as you go up the leg, just make sure that the black is sort of doing a fading kind of thing. And maybe that might just give it a little bit more of a sort of ghostly, floating, not really standing on the ground because it's a hovering ghost kind of thing. I don't know. I think that it'll just be kind of a neat little thing. While we're here too, I'm just gonna touch up the bases because when I was dry brushing with the white paint, you can kind of see that I got some sort of white specks onto the actual base that I used here. I mentioned it in previous videos, I don't think I've mentioned it in this one yet, but I don't really like the bases that come with the regular Mansions of Madness game. I don't know, they're just weird. I mean, I get it, the whole point is that they're supposed to work with the little monster tiles that come with it, but they're just kind of cumbersome and awkward and clunky and just not a big fan. So I just like to use regular bases for the monsters. But yeah, I'm just kind of doing what is kind of like a dry brushing kind of thing. Although my brush, you know, I'm allowing a little bit more actual coverage and coating. The lower to the ground I get, the closer to the base I get. Like the shoes are basically, I'm doing completely black, but then I'm just sort of blending lightly, using sort of a dry brushing technique as you go, and you just kind of feel it. And you just kind of go upward. There we go, and then that just kind of gives an extra sort of weird effect there. I like that. I think that that's kind of cool. You can kind of compare it to this other one right here, and I think that that gives a kind of cool sort of ghostly hovering look rather than just sort of him, you know, standing on the ground. And there we go. I think that that is pretty much what I want right there. I think that that looks pretty cool. If I want, nah. I was gonna say, do I want to like maybe touch up some black into the mouths there just to bring out those mouths a little bit? But nah, I don't think so. I think that that'll be just fine. All right, and then the last thing that I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna coat all of them with a layer of matte varnish. And I think, so I mostly do it off camera, but come to think of it, I don't think I've actually shown applying matte varnish to any of the Mansions of Madness monsters. And I also don't have my varnish here. Hold on one second. Alright, so yeah, I'm just going to take out some matte varnish right here. You don't need any particular brand. And again, this is another optional thing. You don't have to do it if you don't really want to. I will say it's probably best to water it down a little bit. So just get out a decent little amount there. Alright, and then you just take another like big fat no-name brush here and just dip your brush into water a little bit, just like that, and that'll just water it down a little bit more, and that'll just thin it down and make it a little bit easier to work with. And then you just go over the entirety of the miniature. And it's going to have this sort of, you know, milky white kind of like coloration to it, but as it dries, that'll go away. So don't worry about that. But yeah, just like this, you just apply it nice and evenly across the whole miniature. And that's it, simple as that. Like I said, it's going to have sort of that milky white kind of like residue on it in a way, but again, as it dries, it will become totally clear. Make sure you get a matte varnish. You don't want like a gloss varnish or anything like that. I mean, sometimes you can want a gloss varnish. Like the Hunting Horrors that I did just before this, I went over those with a gloss varnish because I wanted them to be really slimy and slick and wet looking. So, you know, you can get a gloss varnish for whenever you want that look, but I would say that if you just want, you know, regular paint jobs, nothing that is, you know, too, you know, detracting or anything like that from anything else, just go ahead and stick with a matte varnish. And again, I said it earlier, but it really is important to make sure that everything is completely dry before you go over everything with a matte varnish like this. Because, especially with like the Quickshades, if your Quickshade is still kind of wet at all when you're applying your varnish like this, it's gonna be weird, and it's gonna mess you up a little bit. So just make sure that they're totally dry. But that's it. We are done after this. And there you have it. There are the ghosts and the High Priest of Dagon. I think that those turned out pretty cool. I really like the sort of, you know, blue and white sort of color scheme that each of them have. I'm pretty proud in particular of the ghosts. I think that they turned out pretty cool. So if you liked it as well, if you thought that the whole thing was pretty easy to follow and some decent paint jobs, go ahead and throw the video a like. If you want to see the rest of the core set of Mansions of Madness being painted, you can subscribe to the channel. I believe the next one that I'm going to knock out are the Deep One Hybrids and the Child of Dagon, just to, you know, knock out several all at once. And then after that, we're going to do what are probably going to be my favorite ones to paint, which are going to be the actual deep ones. But hey, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm excited. Anyway, thank you again, everybody, for watching. We'll see you next time on Easy Mini Painting. Have a good night.